All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we kick off this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to say thank you guys all for tuning into the show, watching the show. If you are new here to the YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, and if you hit the notification button, that is good too. If you enjoy if you listen to the show in podcast form, please leave some positive review on your favorite podcast outlet. And if you like the show, if you enjoy it, please share it with your people, because that is how we get the stagecoach across America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today, I am coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah, at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and I've got my good friend Craig DeLuz with me.
How you doing, sir?
Good to see you. We've been talking about doing this since 2019.
Oh, or probably before then.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I do remember there may have been some drinks involved at the Florida Carry.
There more than likely were drinks involved.
If it's
especially if Florida Carry was involved. Just saying.
This is true. So I'm glad we stayed with our good buddy Patrick Collins at the NRA annual meetings this year in Atlanta. And you're like, hey man, when are we going to do this? I'm like, how about Salt Lake City? You're like, deal.
There you go. It was on my gun rights bucket list.
It's on mine too. All right. So tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? How did you become a gun guy? How did you get involved? Because you got some history with, FPC. You've got some. You started a show with Mike Pewarski. My favorite Mike Pewarski story. We're doing AmCon a few years ago. He's talking about getting traditional media, and he's like, you know what? You always got to have a story.
Yeah. And
I did a show with him in Florida one year, and he's excited. He's like, hey man, I want to be on the show. I love it. He pulled out a little Serbu Mossberg 500, right? And he pulls this out, and he is all excited about being on the show that he had no good stories.
He had no good stories.
All this guy has are stories.
Yes.
And lo and behold, you put the camera on. He's like, "Oh, make sure we go down this way. Got to make sure you turn right up here. We don't want to get lost. We'll be fine."
It's not like Salt Lake is, Los Angeles.
It's not, but there is a parade going on.
There seems to be something going on up here.
Right. So I don't know if Second Amendment Foundation planned this out, but the Fan X event is here in Salt Lake, and it's a furry convention.
It's not it's kind of interesting, but when I first got here, and everyone's experience was pretty much the same. It was like the first thing they saw were people in furry costumes and
all sorts of weird costumes.
Yes, all sorts of weird
characters.
Costumes.
Like it's nuts. And then there's these food trucks that are everywhere too. So we're like, hey, we got plenty of food. This will be great.
Definitely making me hungry.
Yeah. But it's some sort of Fan X conference.
Yeah.
I was excited. In my social media, I saw that Danny Elfman was here.
I heard that. I heard that William Shatner was here too.
I heard William Shatner was here as well. It's 94, 96.
Yeah.
No, maybe not. I think it was 94. Somebody said. The Fonz was here. Robin Sandoval. I was talking with her, and she went over. She wanted to go see John Snyder. Bo Duke, but she ended up seeing Punky Brewster.
Oh wow!
And
how did that go down?
She said she wanted to meet the Fonz, but he was charging more money than she wanted to pay. So anyway, Robin, we think you're awesome. We love you.
Henry Winkler's not the Fonz anymore.
He hasn't been the Fonz since he jumped the shark.
There you go. Exactly.
All right, let's get back to biz here. So
right.
While we sit in traffic, we might just go a block. Who knows?
Right.
Could be the shortest drive ever.
Okay, we shall see.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we get too far, I want to say thank you to Susie, Superfan Susie, for letting us use her stagecoach. She drove to Salt Lake City from Vegas, and she's let me use her car. She's the best. She's awesome. Thank you very much, Susie.
Thank you, Susie.
I know. Susie's great. She's a super fan.
Nice ride, too. Very comfortable.
I know. It's got the little furry thing on the seat. She said, don't be upset if it smells like strawberry.
It did smell like strawberry when I got in.
She's like, you're going to be upset? I'm not going to be upset.
All right, so
let's talk about you.
About Craig DeLuz. Grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in Richmond, California. If you don't know where Richmond is, it's across the bay from the Golden Gate Bridge, also across the bay from San Quentin. Think Coach Carter, if you ever want to have an idea, get a reference of what the community was like. In fact,
All right.
I went to high school with Coach Carter. I'm sorry. He was at Richmond High. I was at De Anza High School there in the Bay Area.
All right. What's Coach Carter? I've heard about Coach Carter. He was a
basketball coach. Yes.
Okay. He
Who
was a white basketball coach at
he was black basketball coach, took a team that was really, really bad, and trust me, Richmond was really, really bad. And actually got him all the way to, I believe, the state championship.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
But really a story about high expectations. As I'm a big believer, with young people, with kids, people rise to the level of expectation that you set for them. And so I think biggest problem we have in education today is we have low expectations, and so kids, well, they rise to meet it.
They rise to the low expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I grew up in Richmond, California, the youngest of a family of 6. Actually, I have a twin brother. We both grew up together. It was kind of neat because I had like a best friend growing up the entire time. So we always played together. We fought with each other, and we were always on the opposite sides of just about everything. I'm a Cowboys fan. He's a Steelers fan. When I was young, please don't hold this against me, I was a Lakers fan. He was a 76ers fan. We were just on the opposite sides of everything. So grew up, went through high school, played sports together. It's funny, in football, he was the strong side outside linebacker. I was the weak side outside linebacker.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how opposite we were.
Right down the line.
Right, literally right down the line. In fact, when we went off to college, he went south to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I went north to California State University, Chico.
Oh my gosh.
And it was kind of funny because he went down to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I always say this. My brother was really kind of just square. Not square. No, I take that back. He was always the vivacious one. But he was always very proper. We grew up, my mother raised me. She's like, look, even though we grew up in Richmond, she's like, you are not talking that slang, you know what I mean?
Right.
You are going to speak proper English.
Yeah.
My brother goes to San Luis Obispo, which is like 2% black, comes back like, just this side of Malcolm X black, right?
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I go to Chico State, finance major. I come back a conservative, or at least I start off a Republican, becoming more and more conservative.
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically, I went to California State University, Chico, graduated from there with a degree in finance. That was where I met my wife. We met 6 months after we met, we got engaged. Wow. A year after that, we got married. 11 months after that, we had my first child. We had our first child, and 17 months after that, had my second. And so I went from basically being single, ready to mingle, to married with children in a very relatively short period of time.
Right, in a 2-year period.
Basically about a 2-year period, and I don't regret a single moment of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so married now. This will be 33 years. 33 years now.
God bless you.
Father of 2. My son, is now 30. That's weird, man. I'm telling you, being the father of a 30-year-old makes you feel really weird. It's like I'm not old enough to have children who are 30. Right. And that's my youngest. Anyway, so father of 2, both married, grandfather to 4, 3 granddaughters and a grandson.
Nice.
That's pretty much kind of defines most of who I am. Now, having said that, I really went through a political awakening when I was in college. I grew up in Richmond, California. For those of you who don't know, Richmond is in the middle of the Bay Area, very left-leaning, Democrat-leaning area. Yeah. Went to school in Chico. Chico, like most college campuses, is kind of left-leaning, but the community itself was very conservative. It was my first got exposed to like Rush Limbaugh and really a different way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Then being a finance major, I learned a little bit about how the economy worked. I learned about free enterprise. I learned about economics and supply and demand, and then also kind of started to really get confronted with issues that impact us on the everyday, and realized, I'm probably not in line with the Democratic Party, and didn't really realize it until I really got involved in politics in college when I decided to run for student body president.
Oh, cool.
I had been the director of Wildcat Enterprises, which we ran the student businesses. I ran student businesses in Chico. They were the third largest employer in the city of Chico.
Wow.
Anyway, so I was on the board of directors, and I was in a professor named Rich McClinney's classroom, and every Friday we get together. There's like 280 black students out of 16,000 students at Chico State when I was there. Mm-hmm. And so a bunch of us would get together and we'd just talk about whatever the issues were. And I remember Professor McClinney said the student body elections were coming up, and he said, Chico State will never have a black student body president. Well, you don't tell me that something's not going to happen. So I decided to run. I was already on the board of directors.
Yeah.
I won with 50.6% of the vote.
Wow.
It was a landslide.
That's right. If 3 kids didn't vote, it would have been a different.
It would have been
right.
It would have been a whole different election. Yeah. Anyway, so I got a chance to really experience politics, and I realized, by the time I was done with that, I realized that I probably had more. I believed in individual rights. I believed in individual responsibility. I believed in entrepreneurship. I believed in the right to keep and bear arms. I believed in all of the values. And by the way, these are all values that my parents raised me with, even though they were dedicated Democrats. Mm. And but I realized, I was like, I can't get down with the Democratic Party, because everything that I believed in, they believed to espouse the exact opposite. Right. So when I moved to Sacramento, which is where my wife and I would get married, and now live, started to get involved in the Republican Party. That was 1992.
Holy moly! Dude.
So I've been active there for quite a while.
Yeah.
I've run organizations both statewide, California Black Republican Assembly. California Black Republican Coalition is what it was called. I was part of a couple of different local organizations. I would eventually go to work for a California state legislator, Tim Leslie. Spent almost a decade working in the legislature. And that's when I met Anthony Tannehill, who was one of the founders of the firearms, he introduced me to Brandon Combs, who was the founder and still president of FPC. And they were talking about this gun rights group that they wanted to start, and they wanted someone to do media for them. I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. I spent almost a decade in the legislature.
You're a powerful and attractive man. Right. You could do some media.
I could do a little bit of media. I knew and understood the legislature. I hadn't been a gun owner for a long time. This was interesting. I got my first gun when I was 40.
What?
Purchased my first firearm when I was 40.
Wow.
My wife didn't feel comfortable having a firearm in the house when the kids were really little.
Okay.
By this point, the kids were teenagers, and I was finally like, you know what, let's get a gun. She's like, okay. And me wanting to be a responsible gun owner, I decided I'm going to study all the laws so I make sure I'm in compliance, and, actually being able to understand how to read the law and understanding exactly how the things that were legal in California were a violation of our constitutional rights,
right?
And on top of making absolutely no sense,
right? How come I can do this over here, but I can't do it here?
Yeah,
right.
It made absolutely no sense. So and that was while I was working in the legislature. Anthony and I were both working in the legislature at the time, and then when the opportunity came to do media, I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. Well, this was the year, and I believe it was when Sandy Hook happened. And all of a sudden, the California legislators dropped over 50 anti-gun bills in 1 year. In one session. I mean, we're talking within a 3-week period. They dropped over 50 anti-gun bills. And they're like, Craig, we need you to lobby. And I had never had a desire to be a lobbyist ever. Mm-hmm. And they were like, look, you know the legislature, you know the people, you know how to read bills. Anthony will go, he'll do all the analysis. All you have to do is go and be an advocate. I was like, okay, well, let's give it a try. And the most poignant advice I got during that process was a guy named Ed Worley, who was the California director for the NRA.
Yeah.
He said, Craig, he's like, a lot of these folks have already made up their mind. This is kabuki theater, these committee hearings. You get each side gets 2 minutes and 2 people, right? So and that's it. That's considered robust policy debate. And I said, well, if this is theater, I'm going to put on a show.
Nice.
And I became known as, I'd already had like a theater background and acting background, and plus I knew the policy, and Anthony knew all of the juicy stuff in the bills. So I would basically, when I would go in and testify, I would put on a 2-minute show. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time it was so bad that a legislator was like, the head of the committee, Bill Quirk, anti-gun legislator, decided, I don't know what just happened, but somebody made an AR out of a shovel. I think we need to take a look at this bill before we pass it through. And it was so bad, the author of the bill was like, but they're killing children.
Jeez, not with this.
Anyway. So, and we used events like that because we realized in the end, in California, when it comes to gun rights in particular, anything conservative, but gun rights especially, you have to get used to winning the argument, but losing the vote. Mm. But we also understood that because all of this stuff is now on film, because all of it's on video, we can now use that to expose literally the illogic that gun grabbers are using in order to take away our rights. Mm-hmm. And that has really gone a long way in terms of helping us to be able to, or went a long way to help us to be able to fundraise and to be able to reach out to people and get people engaged in the fight. Because people see that and they're like, well, this is obvious logical sense. Why would they vote the opposite way? Mm-hmm. And they're like, we got to do something about this. And so that became what I became known for in the California legislature, was lobbying. Was not just the lobbying, but putting on the shows. And then eventually we decided, well, why don't we actually do a show? And that's when I started Morning Coffee with Craig. Cool. It was a daily morning program that we would do, and we would talk about whatever was in the news. We would talk about whatever FPC was doing, what was coming up. And really just kind of help people to understand what's going on in the gun rights community. And what's been neat is to see the proliferation of those types of shows over the last decade, where more and more people, they're not just talking about bills, they're not just talking about the legislation, they're not just talking about gun rights, but they actually know what they're talking about, right? They're actually providing substantive knowledge and helping people who normally wouldn't know or understand, because trust me, some of these bills, some of this legislation is really, really hard to follow. And breaking it down in ways that the average person can understand.
That's the thing. Like when I've tried reading some of this stuff and none of it makes any sense. Like, what does this mean? How does this affect me? Like, I get to the point where they're like, if it just starts to feel like it rambles on, I'm like, I'm out. I can't do this.
There's cross references. Okay, well, it's referring to this section over here, so then you got to go read that section over there. I mean, it can really, really be a problem. So one, it helps when you have someone who knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. It also helps when you start to develop some experience in it, when you've actually worked in the legislature to be able to do it. And sometimes it just takes taking the time and figuring out and rooting it out. But it's almost, in places like California, it's almost like you have to pass the bar in order to be a gun owner.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Anyway, so I was with FPC full-time from 2013 until 2018. And then I worked for them as a contractor from 2018 till about 2022. And I still, every once in a while, will do some stuff with FPC. But really then branched out and started doing a thing with Mike. Mike Pilwarski with Arms Room Radio, we were doing everything. We were doing a bunch of stuff together. We would do NRA together. We would do SHOT. We would do GRPC.
You guys are nuts.
Yeah.
Like, you guys, at NRA, you guys took up a whole booth for the whole day.
Yeah.
Every day. I'm like, what are you, crazy? What are you, nuts?
We just do interview after interview. We just sit and talk and Mike's a fun guy to hang out with.
Oh, for sure.
We were always talking guns whenever, because I would be on his show, Arms Room Radio. He'd be on my show, Coffee with Craig. And when we weren't talking guns, we were talking politics off camera. And we're like, why don't we, since we like talking politics, let's do a show that's talking, politics and guns. So we talk gun rights, we talk general politics. So we create a show called The Rundown, 2A News, conservative views. And it runs Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and we talk about the issues of the day. And we try as much as possible to include Second Amendment stuff in there.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that now. We are in our 5th year, and I think we're on show 983. So sometime in October, we're going to hit episode number 1,000.
Unbelievable. Yeah. 3 days a week is a commitment. Yeah, it's a commitment.
Well, we're 5 days a week.
Oh, 5 days a week. I'm sorry.
It really is. But as someone who, I read the news all the time anyway. And, Mike is able to just riff off the top of his head. So he's always got some sort of a smart aleck comment on something. There are a few people I know who can extemporaneously make you bust up laughing as Mike Pilwarski can.
Right. Unless he's on my show, but that's okay.
unless he's on your show.
He forgets all the stories. But okay, that's all right.
But yeah, so we've been doing it for a while, and I enjoy it because it makes me stay up on the news. It makes me pay attention to what's going on. The prep helps me with that, and it also because it's a live show, that's also helped me expand my business. I have a business called Uncommon Sense Media Group, and we do not just start off doing traditional public relations, but now I do broad-based digital communications. So we do everything from building websites, managing content on websites, social media management, video production, live feed management and production. And a lot of the stuff that I had already known how to do, but I credit FPC and my experience at FPC with being able to learn, in particular, a lot of the live feed and a lot of the digital, a lot of the web stuff.
That's cool. That's great, man.
So that's kind of me. That's kind of where I am. Once again, I'm still involved politically, and actually 2024 made the decision, ran for Congress, was not successful, but I'm running again in 2026.
What do you have to do to run for Congress?
Raise a boatload of money.
Okay.
It's hard, man. Here's the thing. Running for Congress, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can be really good on the issues. You can look really good. You can smell really good. You can be articulate on all the issues. What it really comes down to is, can you sit down at a phone and dial for dollars? You have to be able to spend hours a day on the phone calling people, oftentimes people you don't know.
Right.
Calling people, trying to get them to believe in the fact that you can win the seat enough to be willing to write you a check. And it is the worst part about running for office. I love talking to people. I love talking policy. I love hearing about people's experiences. And I love trying to come up with ways in which to help people. That's the easy part. Right. The hard part is, once again, getting people to donate money. I'm not independently wealthy.
Right.
And sadly, many people who run for office, I won't say sadly, but many people who run for office and are successful are independently wealthy. Which means they have friends who have money.
Their friends who can write a big check.
Right. And they can also front a lot of money in order to get started. And then, then what they do is then once they get elected, they have fundraisers and they pay themselves back.
Gotcha. That's wild. That's wild. What kind of paperwork do you have to do? How do you can't just raise money and be like, hey, right. I'm running for office.
Well, the first thing you do is you would do what's called, you open a committee. You file paperwork with the county and the state and the federal government, basically saying, hey, I'm intending to run for office, and I want to raise money, so I'm going to file a committee. Then you also file paperwork that says, okay, these are my financial interests, right? This is what I do for a living. This is where I make my money. These are the significant investments that I have. And that way they know, so that if there is any conflict of interest, they will then know about it, or at least the public will know if there's any conflict of interest.
Yeah.
But initially, that's really it. Now, you do that early on before you start raising money, and then eventually there's a filing period before the primary where you officially become the candidate. So you go, you get signatures, or you can pay a fee. Mm-hmm. You have to pay this huge fee for what's called a ballot statement. So you get your ballot in California, you open it up, the official ballot pamphlet, and it'll have a statement in there that's a certain number of words, and you have to pay, once again, a boatload of money in order to have that statement there. Mm. And that's, once again, early on. That's like early on in the campaign. So, yeah. So anyway, so then you file that paperwork, and now you are officially the candidate. Your name is on the ballot.
Wow, that's a lot of work, man.
It is. It really is.
It's so a number of years ago, I had a friend of mine that ran for office. Like I was telling you, I don't remember if we started this before or after, or before we started it or after. Mm-hmm. But he asked me to be his campaign manager, and I said, "What do I have to do?" And he's like, "You just have to drive me around so we can knock on doors." So I'm like, "All right, well, I can do that." It was I don't know. It was kind of fun. It was kind of cool. They did have an app that had all of everyone's information, which was crazy, and kind of freaked me out a little bit. But I don't know. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of fun. We'd go to these events. We'd go to neighborhoods and knock on doors and all this stuff, and then we'd see these people that seem like they're completely clueless, but have this nice house with 3-car garage and pool in the back, and we're like, well, what are we doing wrong that we don't have that? You know,
involved in politics, evidently.
Oh man.
Most people are not engaged. There is a piece in not knowing what is going on, because when you know what's going on, it's kind of like, once it's all been revealed to you, you're like, well, we got to do something. We got to stop this from happening. When you don't know, you just kind of blissfully go along in ignorance. There's a certain bliss in ignorance. And
absolutely.
I'm not saying, I'm not advising that, but it's kind of one of those things. Once you know, then if you are a person of conscience, mm-hmm. then you have to do something about it. Now, if you're a person that is not of conscience, then those are some of the people that sometimes then start to take advantage.
Oh, absolutely.
Of that. And then, trust me, there are tons of those folks out there. But like I think you and I have both come to understand, when you start getting involved in the Second Amendment community, you start to see how your rights are being subverted. When you get a chance to come to places like this, events like this, and you see that there are people living in free states that actually have their full rights, and you realize, well, wait a minute, I thought the 14th Amendment meant I'm supposed to have the same rights as anybody else, the next guy. I clearly don't have that. Mm-hmm. You almost feel compelled to get engaged and to do something.
Yeah, for sure. It was wild to me becoming a gun guy, and then you think it's easy, like when you're not, like you said, there's a lot of you don't know what you don't know. But when you think it's like in 2020, when people are like, oh my God, the world's falling apart, I need to go buy a gun, and then they go to states like ours, and they're like, what do you mean I have to have a license? What do you mean I have to take a class? What do you mean I have to do a background check? All this stuff. I have to get permission. I have to go through a background check. I have to take a class. When
COVID hit, and because you had the combination of COVID and you had the George Floyd riots, and in California, that were mostly peaceful, except
only a little fiery.
Only a little fiery. But you had people who were like, you know what? I need to go get a gun, and they went and they were like, oh, wait, what do you mean? I gotta wait.
Yeah, I gotta
11 days. Wait,
11 days.
What do you mean I have to take a firearms safety test? Wait,
yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean I can't? Why can't I have those? Only cops can have those guns. Why can't I buy those guns?
I watch movies and they shoot for forever, and I want to get one of those magazines that has more than 10 rounds.
Oh yeah, well yeah. What do you mean I can't have those What do you mean I can't have those magazines?
Yeah.
It was just, people started to realize. See, you don't realize that your right is being infringed upon until you go to exercise that right.
Yeah.
You don't know you don't know a door is locked until you go to open the door.
Right.
Right. You get mad at people because they tell you, look, the door is locked. There's nothing wrong with that door. You don't need to get in that door. There's no problem with that door the way it is.
Did you turn it to the right or did you turn it to the
left? Right. They don't. But when they go to exercise, they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What? The door's locked. I need to get in the store. I need to protect my family.
Wait, there's a deadbolt I don't know about? What are you talking about? There's no knob. You have to put the key in the deadbolt. Where's that key?
Right. Wait. What happened to common sense gun laws? Yeah, no, they're not common sense. I've coined this phrase, and I know I didn't coin it myself. I got it from someone else, but I think I'm the one who's defined it. And it is, there's the things that people believe out there that you and I know that most people who really understand what's going on know is just misinformation or disinformation, right?
Yeah.
It's that stuff that is considered common sense or common knowledge is actually common nonsense.
Common nonsense.
Common nonsense.
I'm adopting that. It's in the vernacular, like legit.
Right. Just
common nonsense.
Think about all the myths about guns and the Second Amendment that you've heard over and over again, repeated by people who don't know what they're talking about. Right? And they consider that common sense. Well, no, it's not common sense. It's common nonsense.
Common nonsense.
Which is one of the reasons why my company is named Uncommon Sense, because common sense is just not that common.
Yeah, that's great. It's wild to me, like it's wild to me, all the stuff that happens. What I think is really cool is once you've been in the gun community for a while, you start to hear all the stupid things that people say, all the politicians and the shoulder thing that goes up, and it's fully semi-automatic, and you hear all this ridiculousness coming from politicians who are making policy and writing laws and bills and passing them, and it's just nonsense. It's aggravating.
It's like this. And for those of you who don't want to know how aggravating it is, imagine if the only nutrition and exercise advice you can get is from an obese person who's 390 pounds, and they are talking to you as if they are experts in how to get fit and nutrition.
Yeah, totally. You're the non-gun people make gun laws. They have no idea what this stuff is. It sounds good. If it makes them feel good, let's pass it. Yeah, that's not what it is. Well, it'll be okay. You know what we mean. What this is really aggravating. We had this thing in Massachusetts last year. It's called Chapter 135. We have approved firearms rosters, and according to the old Massachusetts law, a firearm is a handgun. Okay, so the approved firearm list are handguns. They wanted to modernize the gun laws, so now they included rifles and shotguns in the term firearms, and the approved firearms roster does not have rifles or shotguns on it. And they left it in there, and then they said this, well, you can still buy rifles or shotguns, there's still restrictions on assault style fire nonsense, but you know what we mean. We're gonna keep it the way it is, but you can still buy rifles or shotguns, even though they're not on the approved firearms list and they're now firearms. You can still buy them, but we're not going to do anything. You still have to fill out the registration form so they know you have it. But it's ridiculous.
In California, we have this thing referred to as the not unsafe handgun roster. They couldn't call it safe, so they call it not unsafe handgun roster.
Yeah, it's the English teacher's nightmare.
Initially, it started off as just because they wanted to come out with something that would get rid of what they call the not safe guns, the Saturday night specials, right?
Right.
And so they said basically initially all I had to do was, all right, you pay this $200. The manufacturer pays this $200 fee. They give the DOJ a sample of the gun, and they do a couple of tests, including a drop test. If it doesn't go off, boom, the gun is approved and safe. Then they added other safety features like a magazine release. So, that would if the magazine came out and there was a round in the chamber, you couldn't fire the gun, as well as a loaded chamber indicator to let you know if there was a round in the chamber.
Yeah.
Well, then that started to then restrict the number of firearms because most firearms manufacturers didn't have those.
Yeah.
Then they decided we're going to now institute micro-stamping. And micro-stamping is where they put the serial number on the chamber. I mean, on the shell casing. But in California, they mandated that it would be in two places. which, by the way, was technologically not possible. When Kamala Harris was Attorney General, y'all know Kamala, the sharpest knife in the Democratic drawer. The way the bill was written, it was like once the technology was available, then it would go into effect. Well, once the technology then became available, well, first of all, initially microstamping technology, Gene Hoffman had, when the patent expired, he re-upped the patent, so he actually had control of it for a while. Once it finally expired, she said, well, the technology is available. Microstamping technology was available, but there still was no way technologically to put it in two places. But it still became the law.
Oh my God.
So all of a sudden, all new model handguns for sale by firearms retailers had to have microstamping in two places. None had microstamping in two places. So guess what? There were no new model handguns in the state of California. This was 2011 or 2013, around there. Mm-hmm. So imagine if, even right now, you could only buy a firearm or a cell phone from 2013.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
No, not even 2013. 2008.
2008. They didn't have iPhones back then, right?
2008, I think, was when the iPhone came out.
Okay.
The first iPhone.
You can have an iPhone.
So imagine if that's the only model you can get. They exist. They're out there. If someone has one, you can buy it from them, but you can't buy. And cops get to have them, right? They get to have the new iPhone, but you only get the old iPhone, or even better, the old tube TVs.
Oh my gosh.
That is how life in California is. It's like right now in California, you can only purchase from a firearm retailer a Gen 3 or older Glock.
Yeah, this all sounds familiar.
And what's even funnier about it is now they have an issue because, you have the attachment that you can put on the older Glocks that they'll make it fully automatic. Well, right. Glock has addressed that with its newer models.
Yeah.
But with California compliant models,
They have not.
They haven't. So now there's a bill. What they've done is they're basically banning Glocks in California.
So that's what the whole thing was about.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But that's the idiocy. It's like, wait a minute. The only reason why Glocks, why you can't do it is because you only allow us to have the old ones.
Right.
If you just allow us to have the new Glock,
then this won't be an issue. Right.
And they would take, and here's the thing, it wasn't just that there was this old roster. If something would fall off the roster, for example, let's say I was buying my springs from ABC Spring Maker, mm-hmm. and now I'm buying them from XYZ Spring Maker.
Right.
Well, that's now a new model firearm. Let's say I change the color of it.
Oh my God. It's
now a new model firearm. Any new upgrade, if I change anything at all, it's a new firearm, and now it's got to meet all of the new requirements.
That's ridiculous.
Yes, it is. But that is the state of California. And it's what happens when you have people who they don't like guns, and they don't like people who like guns, and they really could care less about liberty.
Mm.
They could care less about the fundamental right to keep and bear arms.
Right.
So much so, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, that if you're someone who wants to exercise your right to keep and bear arms, your Second Amendment rights, all of your other rights become suspect.
Yeah.
Your free speech rights. You can't advertise firearms. You can't. In California, at one point, you couldn't have a picture of a handgun on the outside, seen from the outside of your building. You would get fined.
That's ridiculous.
Kids would be sent home from school for wearing a T-shirt that was pro-Second Amendment.
That is unbelievably stupid.
That is how bad it is. So, and then you've got, then we talk red flag laws, which, let's see, how many of your rights are taken away there? Your right to face your accuser, your right to due process, private property rights, right against unreasonable search and seizure. All of those rights are gone.
Yeah.
And California was one of the first places, if not the first, to institute. They called it gun violence restraining order, but we know them as red flag laws.
That's nuts. And the crazy thing, I've heard stories in Massachusetts. The crazy thing about the red flag laws is that all they do is take your guns away. They don't stop you from doing anything else. They don't stop you from having access to fire or gasoline or knives or chainsaws or axes or fill in the blank.
Well, and here's the thing. Keep in mind, first of all, it's a civil, it is considered a civil, not a criminal matter. So you don't get an attorney. When you go before a judge, there's no standard. They don't give you a standard as to determine, how do I determine that I'm not a danger to myself or others?
Right.
In California, they issue, at the same time they issue the gun violence restraining order, they also issue a gun seizure warrant, giving law enforcement the ability to search any place they think you might have a gun, including your home, your place of business, all of that, right? Now think about this. They hand law enforcement a search warrant. They say this person has been deemed to be a danger to themselves or others, and they're armed. And that's all they're given.
That's it.
Do you think they're showing up with candy and flowers?
Right. Knocking on the door nice and polite. Hey,
No.
just wonder if you're around.
They're showing up in full gear.
Yeah, full
Now,
battle round,
if you
yeah.
really are a danger to yourself or others, my guess is this is going to be a triggering moment, or potentially a triggering moment.
Right. It's not going to help. We
No.
think you're dangerous, so we're going to come in. We're going to,
Right.
we're going to come in. Yeah, we're going to come in the all hours of the night and do a no-knock raid at 2:30 in the morning.
So let's say it all goes well. Okay, now you're told, okay, in 21 days you go before a judge. Once again, you don't get an attorney. You don't know what the process is. You haven't even been told what the standard is. And oh, by the way, nowhere in this process has anything having to do with any mental health professional been involved. So no, there's been no like mental health determination. There's been no nothing, and you've committed no crime. And you then have to prove to a judge that you are not a danger to yourself or others. And you may or may not get to face your accuser. They may or may not be there. They may not even be there. They may just say, well, someone said someone said that you did this or did that, and then you have to defend whatever that is.
Unbelievable. And they're so afraid to get it. I'm going to show their face.
And all right, now here's the, if you want the icing on the cake.
Let's have it.
So FPC, we did an analysis of all the people who went through that process, who had been determined that, okay, they shouldn't have their gun rights taken away and they should get their guns back. 80% of them never got their guns back.
Shocking.
Because the people who confiscated them are like, well, okay, you have to, in some cases, some of the anti-gun jurisdictions are saying, you have to prove that this is your gun. Well, I'm like, well, you took it out of my gun safe. You took it from me.
Right.
Right, but do you have the bill of sale?
The bill of sale. Who keeps the bill of sale?
Right. Do you have any evidence that this is your gun? And so in many cases, you have to go through a whole nother legal process, spending money, once again, with an attorney in order to get your guns back.
Oh my God.
This is due process in the eyes of gun grabbers.
Unbelievable. All right, listen, we need to start wrapping things up.
Okay.
How can people find you and all the stuff you do and support your campaign?
Best place to go is CraigDeLuz.com. That's CraigDeluz.com. You can find me on X at Craig DeLuz, or if you just Google Craig DeLuz, and I encourage people to do that. If you want to know what I'm about, you will find tons of articles, videos about where I stand on all sorts of issues, whether it be education, whether it be immigration, whether it be criminal justice, whether it become faith and family, and especially the Second Amendment.
I dig it. I love this, man. I love getting to know more about my people.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. So, like I said, this was on my 2A bucket list.
I'm honored. I'm just a guy trying to keep himself entertained.
Well, I'll tell you what. On my camera case, I have stickers from all of the 2A folks, and you're the only one that has 2 stickers. I have one. I have the riding shotgun with Charlie, and I got the one with you in the trumpet.
The Gun Graham sticker.
Yes.
That's awesome. I haven't bought some of those in a long time, so that's awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the show, Craig. This was great. I'm glad we finally got to do that. Dude, thank you so much for being on the show, Craig.
Thank you for having me.
This was great. I'm glad we finally got to crash the reception.
Sounds like a plan.
Boom. All right. If you have not joined Second Amendment Foundation, you can do so at saf.org. If you enjoyed the show, if you got something out of it, please share it with your friends, because that is how we get the Stagecoach across America. There's going to be all sorts of links in the show description. We will see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.